As many of you may know by now, I grew up in the Philippines, an equatorial tropical environment. My family eventually settled in Los Angeles when I was 11 or 12, where the coldest it ever got was between 5 to 10 degrees Celsius, and this was at night. So much warmer during the day. And even then, I was complaining. So many layers and of blanket and clothing to wear. Now, what really spoiled me was living in Hawaii for 8 glorious years. It never got as hot, humid, and muggy as the Philippines because of the trade winds, and winter was balmy and cool, but you could still wear your slippers wherever you go. Then there was my year and a half in Florida. Now that was coming around full circle because it was probably closer in climate to the Philippines, which is why when I had an inkling I wanted to come here to Canada, I figured I needed a gateway city to frigidity, which was why I chose to live in New York City last year, but it was surprisingly a rather mild winter at that. These days, I'm learning all kinds of things about different types of snow and how low the temperature can go, just like that limbo dance, right? Limbo lower now, temperature lower now. And I'm so proud of myself for complaining a lot less than I thought I would. Patting myself in the back for that. I still remember the first time I ever encountered snow. I was probably 16 years old, and what happened was our family took a family vacation to Lake Powell, which borders Arizona, Utah, and Nevada. I'm not sure if any of you have been there, but it is just absolutely gorgeous. On our way back, we stopped by Bryce Canyon in Utah. This is what Bryce Canyon looks like, which consists of these stunning red rocks that look like majestic fortresses protecting the secrets of the canyons underneath. Now, I thought it was going to be nice and warm because this was already late May, right? And as you might have guessed, I was wearing shorts and slippers as I rushed out of the car to play in the snow. The whole thing was just a sensation that was so foreign to me at the time. The crisp, cold air, just the dryness and constant need for chapstick to keep my lips moisturized, and the sheer beauty of light being reflected by the snow that was so white, it was blinding to the eyes. All of a sudden, all the Christmas music I heard growing up started making sense. Dreaming of a white Christmas, walking in a winter wonderland, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. These were all references that were unfamiliar to me until I had a close encounter with it. That was when I came up with this bright idea that from now on, every single Christmas, I would go somewhere where I could feel the real Christmas spirit instead of this image of Santa and Mrs. Claus that I witnessed when I lived in Hawaii. As you could tell from this picture, they're dipping their toes in the Pacific Ocean. Well, not really the Pacific Ocean, but rather outside the Honolulu Hale or the city hall there. One year, we went to Finland and Estonia, which was, as some of you may know, way too cold for me. And another year, we went to Germany for the Christmas markets in the middle of the town square. But most of the time, we went up to Big Bear Lake since it was only a couple hours drive away from LA, and yet there was usually snow in the mountains. I had this fantasy that I would be able to live my whole entire life in warmer climates with those occasional jaunts to snowy places. But life is full of surprises, isn't it? And I'm not just talking about the fact that I now live here in Toronto, which isn't exactly known for having moderate temperatures all year long. Rather, I'm talking about other seasons of my life. Sure, I've experienced trauma growing up, but it wasn't until May of 2020 when I found out what it means to go through a truly wintering moment in my life. You see, that was when I received a one paragraph email from someone I spent 22 and a half years of my life with asking for a divorce. Now, remember 2020. This was also the beginning of the pandemic lockdown when the whole world was turned topsy-turvy, and I had just moved out of the house the second week of the lockdown. You know, I've counseled congregants before when they went through their own divorce processes, but there's nothing like encountering it myself, similar to encountering snow for the first time. I never really knew what it felt like until I had to go through that horrendous process myself. And all these questions came to my mind, such as, how could this have ever happened to me? We were, after all, the first gay couple to get married in Hawaii. We even made the UU World magazine. We were supposed to be the role models for all gay kids out there that they too could marry the one that they love. Could I blame the governor of Hawaii at the time who showed up for our wedding and during the photo op moment told us, well, the divorce lawyers are going to have a good time with marriage equality. It's going to increase their client base. Like, who the hell would say that at someone's wedding? And was he the one who jinxed it for us? Now, I can't blame the governor for everything, of course, right? And I won't go into all the sordid details of that acrimonious divorce process. But if you ever want to get a glimpse of it, I would recommend you watch the Marriage Story with Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson. It should really have been called The Divorce Story because that's really what it was about. Up until that point, just like for a very long time, I managed to escape living in really cold climates. I also managed to escape hiring an attorney. Yes, over 4.5 decades of my life, and I didn't even need to hire an attorney ever, right? So what a rude awakening and a learning moment that there's a difference between the legal system and the justice system, that they're not synonyms of each other. Those of you who saw the movie might have recalled Laura Dern, who plays one of the lawyers in the movie, and her line still resonates with me. She says, "The system rewards bad behavior." 1.5 years of wintertime, and when I was going through it, I could not see an end in sight, and certainly no justice to be served, only a settlement where I got the short end of the stick. Similarly, it seems like we've been going through a wintering period globally with the impacts of climate change, rise of populism, and anti-immigrant sentiments. And of course, as of yesterday, a tariff war that will impact North America in deep and harmful ways, as was mentioned earlier in the chat box. Again, I'm a newbie when it comes to winters, but it seems more like a polar vortex winter with no end in sight. It reminded me of a movie I saw on the plane recently called Wild Robot, where which is an animated feature, I should say, which premiered on TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, last September. In this movie, Roz, a female-sounding robot, was manufactured to be relentlessly useful to human beings. But there is only one problem. She was shipwrecked on an island that doesn't have any humans, but rather plenty of animals. She had to quickly learn the behavior and programming of these animals and find out how she could actually help them. She eventually built a home with Fink the fox and Brightbill, her adopted orphan gosling, who, of course, eventually had to migrate south for the winter. As Ross goes through her emptiness grieving process, every creature goes into hibernation mode. But this was no ordinary winter. They didn't really call it a polar vortex, but according to Fink the Fox, it was the worst storm he's ever seen. Here's an image of Ross the robot with Fink the Fox. The two of them decided to gather everyone up during that terrible winter storm and bring them back into Ross's home, where there was a nice warm fire in the middle of the room. The problem is nobody got along with each other, and it wasn't very long until the fights broke out in the middle of the home. Fink stated the obvious. This is what happens when you put a bunch of predators and their food supply all in one room. But the only way they could all make it out of there alive that winter was if they all got along with each other. So Ross said, to survive, we must become more than who we were programmed to be. To survive, we must become more than who we were programmed to be. During this global winter, we could either all die or we could figure out a different programming from fear, greed, and narcissism. Will it be uncomfortable at first? Absolutely. Just like my first winter was extremely uncomfortable, having to layer up each time I go out and plan my day accordingly, allowing for extra time wherever I went. And just like I had to figure out a new workout routine, since I love running outdoors 3 times a week and just couldn't do that with the snow outside. But you know what? I think we all got this. That's what we did during the pandemic, wasn't it? That we all had to figure out how to adjust to a new normal. We all had to rely on all our neighbors to make it through. And many of us even put up heart-shaped neon signs by our windows to show our love in a visible way. And just like I had to rely on my spiritual director, therapists, and spiritual practices to get through my painful winter of uncoupling. This winter, I found new ways of coping, which I bet many of you have already figured it out. But I'm a late bloomer when it comes to dealing with the wintertime, right? So here's what I found out. Drink more warm beverages. And believe it or not, I wasn't a tea drinker before because I don't do caffeine, but these days I do drink herbal tea and have lots of cup of noodles. I never realized I would get a craving for cup of noodles or any kind of soup in general. And get those warm, cuddly blankets out of the closet, right? And again, I never even heard about Sherpa before until I got here. And download those workout apps that you could use indoors. And, I mean, I downloaded one during the pandemic that I'm still using today. So these are just a few ways of coping with the wintering of our lives. But what about this one that we got from the reading today? Being aware of our limitations, that we can't possibly do it all. Even Ross realized her own limitations as a robot meant to serve humankind. You can't save the world all by yourself. That's just a good recipe for burnout if you try that. What if, like the prayer that Reverend Carly said earlier, we accept our limitations instead of struggling against them? One of the greatest things I've learned about the wintering process is how little control I have around my excess actions, around the current political climate, around the climate, around other people's programming and behavior. It's a pretty long list, actually, of what I have no control over because it's almost all the external factors that I have little or no control over. I can, however, accept my own limitations to be the change I want to see in the world, to take ownership over my own feelings and reactions, and to move forward as best as I can anyway. This winter, let's accept winter for what it is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's accept our limitations, knowing that there could be lessons here for us as well, and a way to reprogram our own bad habits along the way. Let's figure out a way to work together so we not only survive the winter, but thrive come springtime. And let's take a few more deep breaths in silent reflection this winter time.